सदाशिवसमारम्भाम् शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ Naishkarmya Siddhi, 3rd chapter, page 101, top line. Atmano buddhischa bodha pratyagatmatvam abhihitam tayoho asadharana lakshanabhitam Lakshanabhidhanarthamaha. Sureshwaracharya talking about Svampada Vachyartha and Svampada Lakshyartha. Svampada occurring in the Mahavakya Tattvamasi, talking about the individual I am. Vachyartha means that is mind or ahankara. Whenever I say I am, if I refer to the mind, ahankara, it is called Tvampada Vachyartha. When I refer to Aham Brahma Asmi, that is Tvampada Lakshyartha. The differentiation of that Tvampada Vachyartha and Tvampada Lakshyartha. Tvampada Vachyartha is the secondary self. Tvampada Lakshyartha is the primary self. Primary self and secondary self, what are the differences? The differences are elaborately explained by Sureshwaracharya in these shlokas. 16 and 17 shlokas which we completed, there we saw Atma is the primary self and the mind is the secondary self. First difference. Then second difference we saw was mind or Atma is having intrinsic consciousness. Atma is having intrinsic consciousness, whereas mind is having temporary consciousness. Second difference. Then the third difference is between Atma and the mind, or primary self and the secondary self. Atma is the perceiver and mind is also perceiver. Atma is the perceiver of the mind. Mind is the perceiver of the world. Primary self, Atma, is the perceiver of the mind. And the secondary self, mind, is the perceiver of the world. This is the third difference. Then that fourth difference is Atma is the permanent perceiver of the mind. Mind is the temporary perceiver of the world. Atma is the permanent perceiver of the mind and mind is the permanent temporary perceiver of the world. Then the fourth difference is Atma is the non-changing perceiver of the mind. Atma is the non-changing perceiver of the mind, whereas the secondary self, mind, is the changing perceiver of the world. Mind is the changing perceiver of the world. Last but one we can take. Mind perception requires process or thought process. That is going to come in the next verses. Mind requires to be, as a perceiver, mind requires a process of thought. Whereas Atma, to perceive the mind, it doesn't require a process of thought. Atma doesn't require a process of thought to perceive the mind. Therefore, in its presence, mind is perceived. Process is not required, and perception doesn't require the thought process. Thought is not required. One more also we can add, as we saw in Upadesa Sahasri. Atma is ever the perceiver, ever the subject, never the object. Whereas mind is not ever the subject or perceiver of the world, but it can be the object of the Atma also. Mind is the subject from the standpoint of the world and perceiver, whereas Atma is ever the perceiver of the mind, never the perceived. Mind is a perceiver from the standpoint of the world. Mind is perceived from the standpoint of Atma. So, world is ever the perceived object. I, the Atma, Lakshyartha I, if I take, I, the Atma, am ever the perceiver subject, never the perceived object. World is never the subject, ever the object, ever perceived. Whereas mind, from the standpoint of the world, it is the perceiver. The mind, same mind from the standpoint of Atma, is perceived object. So mind has got subject-object status from two standpoints. Our ahankara, our mind, our secondary self, has got subject status and object status from two standpoints. This is very interesting point. Subject from the standpoint of I, the Atma, original consciousness. I, the subject, from my standpoint, mind is the object perceived. Same mind is the subject from the standpoint of the world. These are all I have already shared in previous classes of different subjects. Here also Sureshwara Acharya is presenting that 16 and 17 what we completed. The changing nature of the mind, because it is a changing perceiver. Therefore, changing nature of the mind, therefore we give the name to the mind Parinami. Parinami Manaha, because it is changing. The changelessness of Atma, we give a Sanskrit name Kutastha Atma. Kutastha means changeless. Since Atma is changeless, we give the name Kutastha Atma. Mind is Parinami Manaha. This changeless and changing. Based on this, Sureshwaracharya developed the subject in the Mahavakya context only. Tvampada Lakshyartha Atma we have to take. In Mahavakya only Tvampada Lakshyartha Atma we have to take, not everywhere. Atma is the changeless Kutastha Atma. Mind is the subject to change. That's why Parinami Manaha. Atma is not subject to change, therefore Kutastha Atma. So now in that slokas, change, because mind is changing. Change presupposes the locus of change and the witness of the change. Change, it requires or presupposes the locus of the change and witness of the change. Now, what is the difference between the locus of the change and witness of the change? What is the difference between locus of the change and witness of the change? Locus of the change is that which is the possessor of change and which is affected by the change. Locus of the change is that which is the possessor of the change and which is affected by the change. What is the difference between locus of the change and witness of the change? The locus of the change is that which is possessor, whereas the witness of the change is not the possessor of the change, and witnesser of the change is not affected by the change. Locus and witness you have to remember. Locus of the change is that which is the possessor of the change and affected by the change. Witness of change is not the possessor of the change and affected by the change. These words are all we are going to apply to Atma, the Drashtanta, later. So, mind is the possessor and it is affected by the change. One is the possessor, another is not the possessor. One is affected, another is not affected. So what is affected? Mind is affected by the change because of 6 modifications. Mind is the possessor of the change, whereas Atma is the non-possessor of the change and witnesser of the change, unaffected by the change. For that, Ghata Akasha Visa. Pratyabhigna of 16th verse also is very, very important. Whenever we talk about the property of the change, locus and witness are involved. When you talk about the property of change, locus and witness both are involved. So Sureshwaracharya want to say, mind happens to be the possessor of the change. Mind is affected by the change. Mind is the possessor of the change, mind is the locus of the change, therefore mind is affected by the change. Why all this I am talking? Raga, Dvesha, Sukha, Dukkha changes are happening in the mind. Mind is the possessor. You are not the mind. You are free from that all those afflictions. So, mind happens to be the possessor of the change, mind happens to be the locus of the change, mind happens to be affected by the change. Whereas Atma is the witnesser of the change, non-possessor of the change, unaffected by the change. If I am Atma, I am not the possessor of change which is happening in the mind. I am not affected by the mind changes which are happening in that locus because I am the witnesser. So mind is called Parinami, Atma is called Kutastha. Then further that both the locus of the change as well as the witness of the change are recognized. Both the locus of the change and witness of the change are recognized by Pratyabhigna Pramanam. In 16th verse he used that. Pratyabhigna Pramanam. Since verses are very terse, we need a lot of revision. Suppose if we miss in previous class grasping, this revision, repetition helps us to recollect so that it will help the following verses can be easily grasped. So when you enter the house, what is Pratyabhigna? Suppose one example we'll see. When you enter the house, Pratyaksham Smriti Pratyabhigna I said. Pratyaksham Smriti Pratyabhigna. First time when you see anything, it is Pratyaksham. Object is in front of you. When you remember, it is Smriti. When you have Pratyabhigna, the object is also in front, but in Smriti, object is not in front, but you remember. In Pratyabhigna, object is in front of you and you recognize. See, suppose a house, when you enter first time, you cannot talk about the changes happened in the house. First time when you go to that house, you cannot talk about the changes taken place in the house. Suppose after renovation, a lot of remodeling the house, if you go to the second time to the same house, you can see the changes, you can witness the changes happen in the house. That is called Pratyabhigna. You compare to the Pratyaksha first time when you saw and it was a different, and the second time when you went after renovation, remodeling, you are the witnesser. You witness the changes. You compare the first time and the second time. Painting color changed, flooring changed, and a lot of other things are also changed. So you can witness the change when you visit the house second time after renovation. First time Pratyabhigna is not possible, not required. Pratyabhigna of that change of that house, remodeling, renovation, painting, etc., etc. Always the Pratyabhigna time, the second time you come to recognize. That is the condition. So that is Pratyabhigna. So the locus of change is known through recognition or Pratyabhigna. Now a Parinami Vastu is known as Parinami Vastu only through pratyabhijna. A changed object is known as a changed object through pratyabhijna. Very important statement. All these we think, why all these things now? We are all going to connect to the Atma later. Where, when, we do not know, it comes. So you have to capture these statements. A parinami vastu is a parinami vastu. A changing object is a changing object. How do you know? Only through recognition. Recognition is always the second time it happens. So the locus of change can be known through pratyabhijna. The locus of the change is known through pratyabhijna, recognition. Similarly, the witness of the change also can be known only through pratyabhijna. Change is also known through pratyabhijna. Similarly, the witness of the change also can be known through pratyabhijna only. What it means, in witness, that I witness the previous condition of the house. Now I witness the present condition of the house. Example, I witnessed the previous condition of the house, dilapidated condition. Now I witnessed the change of the present house. Conditions of the present house, it looks like a new house. Present condition of the house. So, I am the witness of the change of the house, but I am not the locus of the house. I, the witness of the house, is not the locus of the house, locus of the change. Locus of the change, that I am the witness, also known through pratyabhijna only. In the first pratyabhijna, you cannot say you are the witness of the change. In first cognition means pratyaksham. In first cognition, you cannot say you are the witnesser of the change. In recognition only you can say you are the witness of the change. So witness is also known as through recognition, and the locus of the change is also known through recognition. So the difference between the locus and witness, the difference between locus and witness is what now? Locus is the possessor of the change. Locus is affected by the change. Locus is the effect. Locus is the possessor of the change. Locus is affected by the change. Mind is the possessor of change. Mind is affected by the change. Understand now where you are landing. What is the locus, what is change, why, all this, for this purpose. Whereas the witness is not the possessor of the change and not affected by the change. So therefore Sureshwaracharya want to say, whenever I refer to myself as the possessor of the change and affected by the change, now come to this is the point. Sureshwaracharya want to say, whenever I refer to myself, I am the possessor of the change and affected by the change, that I is parinami ahankara. Whenever I say I am the possessor of the change, I am affected by the change, I am very much afflicted because of so and so pain and sorrow you are talking, that I is parinami ahankara. Ahankara That is mind. Parinami ahankara is equal to mind. But whereas whenever I refer myself, I am the locus of change, I am the possessor of change, you are telling the parinami ahankar. You are affected by the ahankar, parinami mind, and parinami body also. Parinami body also. But you refer to yourself as Aham Brahma Asmi. I am witness of the change, not the possessor of the change, not affected by the change. When you say, you are referring to Kutastha Atma or Sakshi. That is, that I is Sakshi, Lakshartha Aham. So this is the purpose of why possessor change I am talking. So that is, I am the possessor of the change, I am affected by the change, I am the mind. When I say I am the witness of the change, I am unaffected by the change. Whenever I say I am Sakshi. Okay? This is the journey. Locus is Samanyam, and which is the possessor of change and affected by the change. Locus is called Samanyam, which is the possessor of Samanyam, where we saw 17th verse. In 17th verse, last class, Samanya Vishesha Cha. So, therefore, witness is called Nissamanyam. Witness is called Nissamanyam. Atma is the locus. Atma is Nissamanyam. Locus is Samanyam. It is the possessor of Vishesha. Visheshacha is there in 17th verse, first line. Visheshacha means change. So Samanyam is continuous. For that clay example I gave, continuous. The Vishesha pot, lid, jar changing, that is Vishesha. Of Visheshas, the change is affected by the locus. Locus. So mind is Samanya, Samanyam and Vishesha. Mind is Samanyam and Vishesha. Now you come to the last point of the last class. Pot and clay. Clay is Samanyam, general, earthenwares. Pot, jar, lid are Vishesham. And space is like a witness consciousness. So therefore in 17th verse, Atma is the witness which is neither Samanyam nor Vishesham. Atma is neither that Samanya clay is continuous in all earthenwares. So like that, Atma cannot be the possessor. Atma cannot be the possessor of Vishesham. And that means Atma is not affected by the change. Atma is witnesser of that Vishesha, that change. But in the Samanya is a locus. It is neither Samanya, the locus, nor Vishesha, the change. Okay. With that second line he concluded, Yaha avikari vikthaya samanyacha visheshacha. The 17th verse, second line. So Atma which is continuous, Yaha, Atma which is continuous, I am referring to the 17th verse. I am revising everything because these are very terse verses. I know how difficult you felt in the last two classes. So Atma which is continuous witness. Avikari, which is changeless. Vyuthaya, which is transcends, are different from. From where? Samanyacha Visheshacha, which is continuous mind, which is the locus of the change, and which is different from changing attributes. Visheshacha. Continuous Atma is different from that continuous mind, which is the Samanyam, locus of the change, and Visheshacha, Atma is different from that attribute, changing attributes also. Space, Ghatakasha, we took that in short, Atma is different from changing attributes. Atma is different from changing attributes also. It is since it is the witness. Witness is not the possessor of change, not the afflicted by the changes. So, attribute nor the locus. Atma is neither the attribute nor the locus of the change. Atma is changeless. Finally, changeless witness, like the Ghatakasha, Kumbhakasha, that is the example. Ghatakasha is consciousness is like a Ghata Akasha, not Ghata, not clay, like body, mind, complex changing, and it is not the matter. Mind is matter. Therefore, what part space is in and through, then the changing part. Ghata Akasha is there in the changing part. Part space is not the locus of the space. Part space is not the locus of the space. Similarly, consciousness is in and through the change, but not the locus of the change, not affected by the change of the body mind complex. Atma is in and through the change, not the possessor of the change, not afflicted by the change. Mind is in and through the change, mind is affected by the change, mind is the possessor of the change. I hope I have communicated. Mind is in and through the changing process, and mind is the locus of the change. Then 18th verse, introduction, what he says, matter is also eternal. In this matter, Atmanaha, look into the line. Up to here we saw in the last class. Okay. Atmanaha buddhischa bodha. Bodha pratyagatmatvam abhihitam. What it means? Matter is also eternal. Consciousness is also eternal. Matter has got a changing eternity. Matter is what? Mind, body. Matter has got a changing eternity. Conscious is non-changing eternity. Consciousness has got non-changing eternity. It is not the locus of the change. It is not. It is the witness of the change. Atma, consciousness. So matter is the locus of the change. Parinami nityatvam, kutastha nityatvam. These are the two words. Parinami nityatvam is the mind, matter. Aparinami or nityatvam, kutastha nityatvam is Atma. Bodhaha. Bodhaha means sentiency. In the first line, the middle, bodha pratyagatmatvam abhihitam. What do you mean by bodha? Sentiency is there for mind also. Sentiency is there for mind also. Sentiency is there for Atma also. That is why confusion. People have confusion. Mind is having sentiency. That's why they are taking Manatmavada. Mind is Atma. Because Atma also has got sentiency. Mind also has got sentiency. That is Bodha. Chetanatvam is common to both mind and Atma. Chetanatvam is common to both the mind and Atma. Then Pratyagatmatvam. Pratyagatmatvam means selfhood. Selfhood is also common to both Atma and mind. These words we already saw, Bodha and Pratyaktam. Selfhood, that means awareness. Awareness, selfhood, I am. That awareness is called selfhood. Is also common to both Atma and the mind. Mind was called secondary self and Atma was called primary self. In the previous slokas also we introduced. That's why I am using the was past tense. Atma was called primary self, mind was called secondary self. So selfhood means it can be referred through the word I. Selfhood can be referred through the I. What do you mean by selfhood? When you say I, the word is called selfhood. I, all of us using every day, every time. I, that I is called selfhood. Now very difficult to remember this. Selfhood is equal to, when you refer to the word I, it is called selfhood. So aham shabda vishayatvam. When you say I am I'm emotional, so that I refers to the which self, primary self or secondary self. I am very much emotional. You will give answer 100 marks, you will get, I know, secondary self, Swamini. Yeah, correct. When you say aham brahma asmi, you are referring to secondary self or primary self? Primary self. You are all getting 100 marks, I know that. So sentiency is also attributed to both of them, the mind and Atma. Tayoho. You see, tayoho means, Atmanaha means for the Atma. For the Atma, buddhehi cha bodha pratyagatmatvam, Atmanaha buddhischa. Buddhi means mind, Atma means for the Atma. Both bodha, sentiency and pratyagatma, abhihitam, already said. Tayoho means sentiency and selfhood. Chetanatvam and selfhood, both of them, tayoho, of these two, sentiency and selfhood, asadharana lakshanam, distinguishing factors, distinguishing features, which are the, we can say many are there, which are the distinguishing features. Abhidhanam, abhidhanartham means for the purpose of teaching. For the purpose of teaching, the author Sureshwaracharya is presenting what? The following verse or the following shloka. Now I will read the 18th verse. Buddhiryat pratyagatmatvam tatsya dehadyupashrayat atmanastu swarupam tat nabhasa shushita yatha. The differentiation of selfhood of Atma and mind. The differentiation of selfhood of Atma and the mind. What are those differentiations? Known idea only, but again he is re-establishing, crystallizing. Mind selfhood is whenever you are objectifying some external objects, physical with physical body, you are using sense organs and looking at the objects, pen, book, house, etc. From that standpoint of Atma, mind is perceived, we said. From the standpoint of body, the world is perceived. Body, world also. Mind is the perceiver and world, body is perceived. Sari. Ipo, now what is here the difference na? Buddhi buddhehe yat pratyagatmatvam. Atmanaha pratyagatmatvam. The selfhood of the mind, and that is tat syat dehadi upashrayat. The mind need deha, upadhi, etc. Mind is called I, the self, or the subject from the standpoint of body and the world. Mind is the subject. Buddhehe means that mind. Yat pratyagatmatvam, whatever the selfhood is there, mind is also playing as subject. Mind is the perceiver. Mind is the observer of the body. Mind is the observer of the world. Pratyagatmatvam, selfhood. Tat dehadi upashrayat, because from the standpoint of deha, body, adipadat, world, house, you are the perceiver. Your mind, that means secondary I is the perceiver from the standpoint of, or secondary self is the subject from the standpoint of deha, body, adipadat, other objects, trees. You are the perceiver of the tree, you are the perceiver of the house, you are a perceiver of your foot, you are the perceiver of the hand, you are the perceiver of so and so. Perceiver. Ashrayat means depending upon the body, worldly objects, mind. Buddhi is the having pratyagatmatvam, means subject. I told you already, mind is the subject or perceiver from the standpoint of the body and the worldly objects. That is the essence of this first line. So from the standpoint of external physical body. Ashrayat means from the standpoint of deha, external body, physical body. Body is external or not? Body is external to the mind. Mind is inside. Body is external to the mind. Okay, world is external from the body standpoint. But from the mind standpoint, body is external. That's why deha is used. Whereas atmanaha tu atmanaha pratyagatmatvam tu, that pratyagatmatvam from the first line you have to apply here also. Atmanaha pratyagatmatvam, whereas the Atman's selfhood, the selfhood of Atma, that is primary self. Atma enjoy the perceiverhood, perceiver status all the time, swarupam all the time, intrinsic, There is no need of from the standpoint. Standpoint is not required. Mind is the perceiver from the standpoint of the body world. Atma is the perceiver from the standpoint of the mind, but it is its swarupam, intrinsic, absolute status of the um, Atma enjoy the perceiving status all the time. All the time, because Atma is never perceived. Atma enjoy the status of perceiver all the time. It never become an object of mind. It never be perceived by the mind. That is why Swarupam word is used. Tat. Tat means here Pratyagatmatvam, that selfhood is Swarupam of Atma. So mind in between. So Atma, mind and world. Atma is ever the perceiver, world is ever the perceived, mind is a perceiver and perceived also. Standpoint is there. So the Atma is ever the perceiver, Pratyagatmatvam Swarupam. It is nature. Like what? Navasaha Sushita Yatha. Yatha means like the hollowness of the space. How the space is accommodating. Hollowness means, Sushita means, hollowness means accommodating capacity. Accommodating capacity of space, like that Atma is accommodating the mind, thoughts, everything all the time. It is free from any change. It is a witness consciousness from the standpoint. Here all standpoint. So Atma is ever the perceiver. The essence of this verse is Atma is ever the perceiver. It is its intrinsic nature, never perceived, ever the subject, never the object. Mind is a perceiver also from the standpoint of the world, and mind is the subject from the standpoint of the world. It is temporary. Why? Because mind becomes an object from the standpoint of Atma. Mind becomes perceived from the standpoint of Atma, therefore temporary. So what now? The temporary mind, temporary perceiverhood, why you are claiming as yourself and suffering? The permanent subjecthood, permanent perceiver you are really. You claim that, own up that, so that you are free. Free from what? Soka, moha, etc. Next verse, 19th verse. Bodhrutvam tadvadevasya pratyayotpatti hetutah atmanastu swarupam tat tishtantiva mahibhrutah. Very nice shloka. Now differentiating previous 6, 7, 18th verse is what? Differentiating the selfhood between the mind and Atma. Now Sureshwara Acharya differentiating the awareness of the mind and awareness of Atma. Selfhood over. Selfhood means Pratyagatmatvam. Then both are the consciousness, the awareness of the mind, the awareness of Atma. What is the difference? There is a difference. Mind has got borrowed sentiency. Atma has got intrinsic sentiency. You know all these things. Again and again listening so that I am Atma only, Swamini. I cannot be the body. After listening this much, how can I say I am the body-mind complex? You won't say, but when the pain comes in the body, mental strain comes, that time also you should say, yes, Swamini, that pain also belong to the body. And mental disturbances also belong to the mind. You need not tell to me. You have to say to yourself, आरुदले you have to say to yourself, yes, चलता है, like that. So differentiating mind and Atma. Mind enjoys temporarily that sentiency and undergoing modification. Mind awareness, bodha, consciousness, the sentiency or awareness of that mind undergoing a modification, whereas the mind becomes the aware of the world. It requires idam vritti, world thought. Mind requires idam vritti. Therefore he said pratyayaha utpatti hetutaha. Pratyayaha means vritti in the first line, second half. Pratyayaha means vritti. Utpatti means the rise and fall of the thought. Because people don't have time to think about how many thoughts are coming in the mind, how many thoughts are falling. Every second, every minute, every hour, every day, every week, hours together, days and days, we are carried away by those thoughts. Just you look at your thoughts as a witness consciousness, then all you can watch, understand. Pratyayaha utpatti hetutaha. The awareness, the awareness of the mind, the process is required. Process thought. The process of thought is required. Utpatti, pratyaya utpatti hetutaha. Since, because the vritti hetu means what? Utpatti means parinama. The modification, vritti parinama, thought modification has to take place where bodhrutvam tadvat eva asyaha. Tadvat means you have to take from the previous shloka, you have to continue. In the previous shloka we said about selfhood. About that selfhood, selfhood awareness. I am awareness. Here what? Sentiency. Tadvataha. Like that only here also. Bodhrutvam. Bodhrutvam means sentiency. Asyaha, of that mind. Pratyaya utpatti hetutaha. Because of the modification of thought only, it is possible. What is possible? That sentiency. Whereas Atmanaha tu swarupam tat. For the primary self, tat means here that awareness, bodhrutvam. That bodhrutvam, the sentiency. The sentiency is swarupam, is its nature. Like what? Tishtanti mahibhrutaha tishtanti iva. Mahibhrutaha tishtanti iva means, see, in sleep, mind is neither aware of the world, not aware of the body, is not aware of itself, mind, in sleep. That is, ahankara is resolved. Whereas in sleep there is no aham vritti, idam vritti. In waking state, aham vritti is there, idam vritti is there. So Atma asyaha bodhrutvam means the mind awareness and the world awareness of the mind. Asyaha na mind bodhrutvam pratyaya utpatti hetutaha is only because of the rise and fall of the thought. Atmanaha, to the awareness of the Atma is not the process of thought. So it is not the process in Atma, not an attribute of Atma. Atmanaha, awareness, bodhrutvam, is not a process happening in the Atma or not attribute of the Atma. Then what is the relationship between Atma and awareness? Awareness is not the property of Atma. Awareness is not attribute of Atma means that awareness and Atma, what is the relationship? There is no relationship. Atma is awareness, awareness is Atma. There is no difference. Both are one and the same. Suppose you say Atma is the witness of everything, means is it not a verb? Atma is not having any process of witnessing. That witnessing is also a verb. Perceiver also you said Atma is the perceiver. Perceiver is a verb. How can you say Atma is not having Swarupam you are telling without any modification? You are telling in mind there is a Utpatti, Hetu is there, Pratyaya Utpatti. Here Pratyaya Utpatti is not there, you are telling. Mind is also perceiver. You are telling there Utpatti Hetu, Pratyaya Utpatti. Here Pratyaya Utpatti is not there for Atma, even though you are telling perceiver. For that, what Sureshwaracharya says, we have no other word, we are helpless, we have to use the language to communicate what to do. But that perceiver is not like a verb, ordinary verb like. It is just like the mountain is standing. Standing mountain. Example is given here. In Upadesha Sastri, Shankaracharya took another example. The fire burns the cloth, or fire burns the wood. If fire is burning is an action. Fire is burning, an action is not an action. Even though it is a verb, it is the nature of the fire. Fire is not doing an action of burning. When the paper comes or house or wood or comes associates to the fire, it gets burnt. This example I gave previously also. It gets burnt. Fire is burning is not an action done by the fire. Sureshwaracharya gives that example here. Mountain, Mahi Bhrutaha means mountain. Tishtanti iva, standing like. That conveying what? Stable. Mountain never moves. Like person is moving, now he is standing. Okay, person moves, individual moves, but he is standing now, that means he is not moving. But in the case of mountain, it never moves. It is standing and standing. Tishtanti iva, as though standing. Mountain is standing means what? Conveying stable. Mountain is motionless. It is motionless when? Mountain is standing when? Eternally. But standing is a verb. Can you take it as a verb? Like that here also. Atma is the perceiver means as though perceiver, it is not a perceiver. More in the next class. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ।